concept of public sphere, and then I go on to the issue of cyberspace, and the argument or question being whether cyberspace is actually a media by which, or is a medium by which public sphere can be established. See, in case of public sphere, what is the logic, or what are we primarily looking at? If you look in terms of democracy, and when you use the word democracy, one of the things that we constantly talk about is the idea that people need to talk to one another. Debates, discussion, communications are the words that are generally associated with it. And if you actually go back in time, whether it was Athens, whether it was in the European period when democracy flourished, or when it caught on into other parts of the world, almost every thinker worth his steel does talk about the fact that how communication and discussion and deliberations are so central as far as democracy of any type is concerned. Now, one of the questions which does haunt a lot of us and has come to be discussed extensively is, are we losing that art? Is deliberation disappearing? Is discussions disappearing? And sometimes when I see television channels, when what passes off as debates seems to make me feel that there's something seriously wrong. We don't seem to talk, we shout. We don't communicate, we yell. So the fact is, if this is something that is an indication of what's going on, it's definitely a scary scene. And that's the reason why it's important to ask ourselves the question, why is public sphere important in the first place? How are we actually using it? And what have been the problems associated with it? So the question here is, when we say communicate, whom are we communicating with? What are we communicating with? What is the content of it? And to what extent are these communications effective? And this is where I will touch upon Habermas's book, because when we use the word public sphere, it's obvious that we are referring primarily to his work. He is the man who's credited with much of the work. If you look at his work, the book which is most central is the structural transformation of the public sphere. Now, in this book you find, how does he define it? He defines it by saying a domain of our social life in which such a thing as public opinion can be formed. Access to the public sphere is open to all citizens. A portion of the public sphere is constituted in every conversation in which private persons come together to form a public. When the public is large, this kind of communication requires certain means of dissemination and influence. Today, newspapers and periodicals, radio and television are the media of the public sphere. We speak of a political public sphere when the public discussion concerns objects connected with the practice of the state. Now, what is significant about this is, if you look at the first sentence, he thinks public opinion is formed in the public sphere. I mean, that for him is the most central. And that's also the reason when you look at the television channels, you look at their debates, the big question mark that comes is, what kind of public opinion can ever be formed in those kind of situations? Because what you have is what someone like Rawls would call intractable conflict. No one agrees with anyone. And I'm told people are chosen to actually do that. I mean, I'm told that people who may agree with someone else don't get to be called. It's you have to deserve. I can understand the logic debates are in such a nature. But Habermas's work primarily assumes a number of things. Firstly, when he talks about the public sphere, he's primarily talking about what he calls as the new bourgeois class. Second, it's a liberal debating space. This is extremely central. The reason being that a lot of people have criticized his work, saying it's essentially a liberal society that he's talking about. He leaves out the non-liberal society. But being a person from the European school, it's extremely understandable. The third is, he talks about the fact consensus are important. And then you have institutionalized influence on the state. So the media plays a role in influencing the state once the public opinion is formed. And then comes the next aspect, which is not yet commercialized. So for him, a public sphere is a place where people come to debate, come to talk to each other, but in a completely non-commercial environment. And the example he gives is of a coffee house. A coffee house where people could come together, talk to one another, inclusive in all that property and educated, that they represented a fraction of the society. What is important here is the status of the person is completely disregarded. The status of the individual doesn't matter. What matters is the strength of the argument. Whoever has a better argument, whoever is able to present a better argument, is the person who takes the day. And finally, it says not only will the finest discussion allegedly hold sway, conversational territories traversed old boundaries and discussion within such a public presupposed the problematization of areas that until then had not been questioned. Questions could be asked, it could be discussed. How you came to a solution or how you pointed out the answer, wait. Okay. Now, if these were the main arguments, he then goes on to say that this was the ideal situation, an ideal situation where ideal conversation happened. Real world doesn't work in ideals. So what do you find over a period of time? If you see there, he marks the decline of the public sphere, commercial comes into the picture, and then what happens? It's the publicity that sells. It's not the argument, it's not the superiority of the statements made, it's who actually is able to advertise their idea that gets to be sold. And this is where he says the decline happens. So the massive commercialization that happens. And what do we find today? One of the things that we are told is all centers of public sphere are on the decline. Whether it's the church, whether it's public spaces like parks, temples, name what you want. People don't go there any longer. And even if they go, they don't stay back for discussion and debate. So there is a decline which is happening. And it's in this sense that the belief is, if there is a vibrant space where people are talking to one another, a place where people can interact with one another, the argument is it's a cyberspace. It's here that people can talk. And what's more, the argument is people are talking extensively. They're talking to one another in a massive manner. See, the fact here, if you see in terms of numbers, India has the third largest number of people who get onto the net. And we are told in a couple of years, we are going to be the largest in the world, even overtaking countries like China and US. The cyberspace is the place where public conversation is happening. That's the place where public sphere is actually existing. And these data give you an idea of how far we have reached. And if you're looking at India, we've just had an election where we've been told social media was the media of election. And I have serious reservations about it. What is the penetration rate of internet in India? 19.19. Okay. Which means we still have a phenomenally large number of people who don't have access to it. Firstly, the existing of a forum. Is there a forum in the public sphere? Second, if various arguments and views are confronted through rational discussion. And third, if agreement or disagreement is based on reason. Are these the three things that are happening? If these three happens, then you can call the cyberspace a public sphere. If it doesn't happen, it's no longer, it cannot be really considered one. When you get onto the internet, one of the arguments made is your identity is not known. You know, for example, when I look at each one of you, I may not know you individually, but I have some idea. I can keep thinking, okay, this one must be from here, this one must be from there. You do it all the time. So the fact here is, internet doesn't give you true, at least that's what we are told. I'll come to questioning it in a few minutes. So the most crucial is that it's completely unbalanced. The second we are told is the age of meta-narrative is over. Internet is often considered to be a postmodern manifestation because there's nothing like one-track communication. Different views can be heard. And the third is there is this, what is called as a self-organizing and a wicked sense of anarchy. Wicked sense of anarchy where I can put what I want, I can waste any information I want. At another level, if you see the quote, it says that there is an increasing atomization of individuals. Most of the time when you are on your computer, and a lot of us spend a lot of time, what is it that we are actually doing? We are communicating with someone who might be at the other end of the world, chatting with that person, forgetting the world that we are in. The second, I get into the computer as an individual, their statement. And I might disagree with you, but I will fight till the end of my breath for your right to communicate. Look at the kind of violence that goes on. I mean, look at the trolling that goes on. Look at the violence that goes on. The second which comes up is the whole divide. I mean, for example, when we talk of the digital divide, there are a lot of question marks which come up even when we talk of the digital divide. I mean, I don't want to get into a lot of discussions on that. But what does it mean? Studies after studies say that it's dominated by a few. The fact is, what is the language you're supposed to be using? The so-called cyber language. For example, when you're chatting with someone on the cyberspace, and you have someone talking to you or chatting to you back in that perfect English. Okay, what's your first reaction? Must be an old person. You have no time, you have no time or energy to go through those grammatically correct, perfectly typed language. It takes time. It takes time. The other which becomes clear is when we say that identities are not known. There are serious question marks that would be used. For example, studies done has shown that when you actually analyze when you use, say, example, especially when you use linguistic processing technology, it shows there's a very clear difference in the way in which men and women do use the internet. One of the commonest things that was said is women tend to use more smileys than the men do. Okay, so these are some of the kind of indication that there is a distinction. You know, there are differences that are made. And in many cases, women don't get into it because they've been trained to believe technology is not for them. You know, technology is something which is for the men. And what is also said is the language of cyberspace itself is extremely masculine. For example, the language we use, internet penetration, it's almost like a masculine military penetration. So, the hate speech is what I said. The amount of hate speech that we see is not funny at all. And it's increasing rapidly, it's increasing phenomenally. The other is, of course, what is called as cyber organization, where probably we are getting into a world where, for example, you go to the library, you see a lot of books, you accidentally find a book which you didn't even know existed. Today, what do we do on the net? All tailor-made. I have newspapers tailor-made to my requirement. So I say, I only want to read sports page, I don't want anything else. So sports page comes in front of me. I only want to read liberal newspapers, so only the liberal newspapers come. The left is kept out. So even by accident, I don't read things which I should be reading. Which is where the problem comes, because I'm reading only what I've already decided I want to read. And that's the reason why the argument is the polarization is increasing. The polarization is increasing because even when I argue, I shout, I scream, I still hear something on the other side. Here, what have I done? I've shut them out even without listening to them. As a consequence, what you have is a massive echo chamber, where you're hearing your own voice, spoken by others maybe, but it's exactly what you already believe in. So if public sphere is a place where public opinion is created, where people meet, talk, discuss, the argument is it's not happening. The other thing which was often talked about, especially Manuel Castells talks about, is when you talk about deliberation. You know, when you talk about discussions, what does it involve? Slow process, thinking, reasoning, arguing. On the internet, what is the privileged aspect? Speed. Okay, someone chats with you, chatting with you. You don't reply immediately. What happens? The person signs off and goes. Okay, or the person is fed up. And even for us, I mean, even at this age, when I see a message, my response is immediate. I must immediately reply. I mean, it's not even as though I think and then I reply. And then I say, oh, why did I do this? Let me delete it. See, the fact is when you're going to reply in speed, what kind of rational thoughts are we talking about? What kind of deliberation are we talking about? Because it's a breathless interaction. And finally, is public space an open space? Is it like the coffee houses of the 17th century? No. What you now have is what is called the enclosure of the commons all over India. A lot of cyberspace is no longer free. You don't have access to it. And what's more, many of these have been handed over to the private sector without even a debate and discussion. So the refeudalization liberalization that Habermas talked about regarding the print media is happening here as well. The intellectual property rights is gradually but steadily taking away a lot of things that we took for granted. Their commercial interest decides what they will give, what they won't give. I may not subscribe, but if I don't subscribe, I lose access to everything. We are constantly being monitored. What we say, to whom we say, who knows where it goes. And the best part is we don't even know who goes. It's not just the state which is the orbiting big brother. The corporate world is also surveying you very carefully. See, the fact here is that's the kind of issue, the surveillance being what it is. And you have all the cookies and whatever else that comes to it. I mean, cookies, I stopped liking cookies after this. So, of the book, would I say that cyberspace is acting as a public sphere? It has the potential. You can be interacting with a fantastically large number of people, but at the same time, these are factors which actually come in the way of ever making them a public sphere. At least one has to be careful about it. One needs to think about how we are going to use it or what are the factors. And the privatization has made it even worse. The kind of access you have to the net may be a story of the past 10 years down the line. 10 years is an optimistic bet. So when we celebrate the fact that there is happening, privatization is something one has to be extremely careful about.